Hi, and welcome back to Act on Mental Health. My name is Sean Hardy, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor based here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I'm going to be sharing with you some material that I use in my sessions with clients. And this is for therapists using ACT with clients, for graduate students trying to figure out if ACT is the right therapeutic modality for them, and also for clients that are looking to support their work with a therapist who's using ACT or who want help with their mental health struggles. So, this is a protocol that has 10 sessions, and we are in session 2. Now, session 1 was focused on control as the problem and opening up clients to using willingness or acceptance based strategies rather than control strategies. In session 2, we're going to be talking about cognitive diffusion and how to transform our thoughts, or at least transforming our relationship with our thoughts using cognitive diffusion. Now, some therapists don't like to use the word diffusion in session, but I'm one of those therapists that do like to use it. And the reason I like to use it is because it actually helps the client to understand what we're trying to accomplish using these techniques. So I start with the word diffusion is a made up word. If you were to look up on Webster's dictionary, you would not find the word diffusion. You would find the word diffusion, like with an I, but not with an E. And this is something that ACT uses to describe something that doesn't exist. You see, fusion is an irreversible process of combining two or more substances together. So once you do that, there's no way to get it back. For example, during our wedding, we used pink and green sand as kind of the unity expression during our ceremony. And there's no way we could get each individual grain of sand, both all the pink and the green, out. It's an irreversible process. So diffusion is a made up word that describes the way that we reverse a process of fusion. Fusion to what? Well, fusion with our thoughts. Their thoughts have a literalness to them, meaning they come to us as if they are true. Not only that, but that we are those thoughts. Even the way that we describe our symptoms. I am depressed right now. I am so anxious. I am afraid. The way that we describe it is if we are that thought, when what we mean is that we are describing an event. We're describing a word, something that is happening within us. That is not us. So when this happens, it can feel like we're being hooked or feel like we're being caught up in that thought. And it often pulls us toward behavior that either tries to control our internal symptoms or try to offer some sort of temporary relief. So avoidance, distraction, or something that gets us away from that thought. So thoughts have quite a bit of power. So I like to use the word diffusion with a client so they understand what it's trying to get at. So part of this teaching, it's like a 10 to 15 minute teaching with an exercise. So I start with the word diffusion, and then I go into how language creates suffering. I think about how human language is different than the animal kingdom. Humans are the only ones that actually have this ability to use language. Now, it gives us an advantage over all the animals that we're able to cooperate, we're able to describe signs and objects that they point to, and uh, and just using these audible noises to do so. We also think in language, so we're talking to ourselves. And so this is something that can be extremely powerful, as well as giving us an ability to create meaning. The mind is designed to predict, compare, judge, and problem solve. And language helps us with these external problems that come up in our society and with one another. But it has this opposite effect internally. You see, it creates a lot of our suffering. language itself creates meaning and suffering. Another way to say this is that your mind is a great lawyer, but a terrible therapist. It's not always going to give you the good in everything. It's going to create some heartache. Now, have you ever argued with your own mind, your own thoughts? As therapists, we're taught that using modalities like cognitive behavioral therapy is very heavy on challenging and changing thoughts. It actually, has some techniques that I've utilized with some clients to put your thought on trial. Like there's a prosecutor and a defendant and trying to analyze the evidence for and against the thought. And a lot of it is well intended, but it can have an impact because you begin to identify with that thought as if you have to debate it, whether it's true or not, instead of acting in accordance with your values. So ACT doesn't get into the debate or the challenging of these thoughts. In fact, it tries to get us separated from the language part of things, the meaning part of things, so that we can look objectively and say, oh, I'm noticing this thought right here. I'm noticing I'm having this feeling. I am not this thought and feeling. Now, I mentioned this paradox in the last video, but it's kind of an adaptation to Stephen Hayes' line. But whatever you don't want, you have. Meaning, the more that you want it, the more that you have it. And this comes into play with our thoughts. The more that we don't want that thought, we try to not think about it. And I think for people that especially suffer with intrusive thoughts, maybe compulsively, maybe not, but they have these thoughts they don't want and they continue to plague them. Well, if you're using distraction or using like intentional focus to get it out, it'll work in the short term, but in the long term, it makes it more intense. You can think of attention as fertilizer for thoughts. The more that you focus on that, and even the focus of not having it, the more it tends to grow. So I want you just even to try this little experiment using a chocolate cake. So I don't want you to think of a delicious chocolate cake. We're just going to do this for about 30 seconds. And in this time, I don't want you to think of a delicious chocolate cake. So whatever you have to do, just get that out of your mind and don't think of it. All right, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do that. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, so how did you do? Go ahead and put in the comments how well you're able to do that. I've heard from different clients that they were able to do it at first by thinking about something else that was more preferable, but they would find themselves within that 30 seconds going back to the rule of don't think about a chocolate cake. When you tell yourself don't think about a chocolate cake, what are you thinking about? Chocolate cake. Don't think about it. So it's really, really difficult. I would say nearly impossible to on command not think of something. Some people will swear by it, but I think it has the opposite effect. The paradox is the more you don't want it, the more you have it. So you can try these techniques, but they will prove themselves ineffective because you can't just delete a thought and you can't just not have a thought. You're going to have a thought. And this brings us to the second little exercise that I want to bring out to your attention. All right. And I'm actually going to write down a couple numbers for you. So if I was in session, I would write them on the whiteboard. But I'm going to write these numbers. All right. I'm going to give you 3 numbers, and I want you to commit these to memory. All right. Can you see the numbers? All right, 1, 2, 3. Do you got it? All right. So I want I want to now ask you to delete those numbers. Okay. Can you just like forget that I ever said those? Forget that you ever saw the numbers. I won't even mention those numbers. Let's replace them maybe with 6, 7, 8. All right. So 6, 7, 8. I want you to remember those three numbers now. Don't remember the other ones. We're not even going to talk about those ones. All right. Now, if I saw you maybe in 2 weeks at our next session and I asked you what were the three numbers, you would probably be able to give me both sets. You would probably say, well, you told me 6, 7, 8 to repeat them, but the original numbers were 1, 2, 3. And this brings us to a principle about language and about our thoughts, is that once it's in, it's in. For example, I could say a nursery rhyme like Mary had a little whose fleece was as. You would be able to fill those in. I could do it on different things, like different little lyrics and songs that are popular in culture that you have heard, and your brain will complete it. You will be able to finish those things that you haven't even thought of for years. I mean, back to when you were in Sunday school, I could point out a very abstract detail and you would be able to recount it because once it's in, it's in. Now, I wish I could say that with everything. I swear, my wife says that she's told me things. She's like, I told you that. You just weren't paying attention. And therein lies a truth, is when I pay attention, it sticks. But when I don't pay attention, it doesn't. So yeah, we can't always control what gets in and what stays out. But there is that truth. Once it's in, it's in. So we know that we have these thoughts and they come to us as literally true. And we know that we're trying to separate our thoughts. We're trying to diffuse. But how do we do that? Well, this is where I want to bring you to an experiential exercise. And what I want you to do is I want you to write down on this piece of paper a thought that is uncomfortable for you. And if you were to scale this on a discomfort scale, it would probably be about a 7. So I want you to think of maybe a word or 2 or 3 words that describe this thought. All right, can you do that for me? So this is where I would have a blank piece of paper, maybe a big marker. I think I got one right here. And I would just have them write as big as they can the word. And once they write it down, I'll say, oh, okay, what's the word? Let's say that the word is, I'm trying to think. Let's say stuck. That's doesn't necessarily have a certain discomfort to me, but let's say it brought about a 7 on the discomfort scale. Say, okay, so you have that. Now I'm going to do this with you so that you don't feel like you're doing this alone. But what I want you to do is I want you to have that, and I'm going to have you bring it about 6 inches from your face. All right, can you do that for me? So this is what I should be saying. And I want you to see it to where you can see the word. Can you see the word? All right. Now describe this experience. What is this like to see this word, and what do you notice around the word? What do you notice about what you're seeing? So I might get some things like I don't like it, or makes me feel queasy, or hey, I can't see anything else around me. I can't see you. I'm like, okay, just notice that. Now, what I want you to do next is I want you to just bring it down into your lap. Okay, so you can still see it. It's still there. But now, what do you notice? What are you saying? And I'll often hear things like, well, I can see a lot more now. Or some, they might still be fused with this thought. They might still think, I still see it, or maybe it makes them feel worse. I feel it. I feel even more uh, like stuck to that. So whatever it is, it's okay. We're going to validate it as what they're experiencing. But the way that I describe it is, this is what I mean by changing our relationship with our thoughts, with our minds. We sometimes will have a thought, and it's like the only thing that we see. It takes us out of the present. It takes us out of whatever else is going on, and this is all that we're seeing. And what we're trying to do using ACT is we're trying to bring it down. It's still there. We acknowledge it, but it frees us up to see what else is going on around us. And that unhooks us, or at least gets us unstuck so that we can move to the next thing. So if you don't have a piece of paper, another one that I might use is just to use their hand. You can use your hand and then bring it down. That can be effective as well. This kind of depends on what works in your setting. Now, we kind of have come to the end of the education part, but at the end of the session, as we've kind of talked about different thoughts that have been sticky or different thoughts that they get fused with, I'm going to give them an opportunity to start tracking that. So I might use like just a basic kind of tracker. There's one called an anger diary that I find useful, not just for anger, but it has a kind of the breakdown of sensations, urges, emotions, thoughts, and something that they can begin to kind of track things or thoughts that they know that they're when they notice that they're getting fused with. And then in the doing what matters in times of stress resource that I mentioned at session 0 that they should have by now, I'll refer to, I think it's session 2 in that, or chapter 2, the second tool, and they can use that outside of therapy to kind of reinforce what we've learned. All right, so at the end of this session, they should have a good idea on what fusion is and what defusion is, and then what we mean by changing our relationship with thoughts. This will help later on in sessions when we start talking about self as context or the observing self, that they are the one that's noticing their experience. They're the one that's noticing their thoughts. And for a lot of people, that can be revolutionary. So that brings us to the end of session 2, and we'll get ready to go into session 3 in the next video. Remember, your journey towards a more purposeful and mindful life begins with a single click.